One of the most important steps in the research process is knowing what you're going to write about. This is beyond just a systematic review or an evidence-based review of a topic. This is for everything, and everyone has problems with this before they start their research, because if you don't know what you're searching for articles about, you're never going to find what you want. In this brain chart, I'm going to focus in two parts. One, on what happens in general evidence-based systematic reviews, and also on what you're going to do in this assignment. So you'll hear me talk about both sides of this. First, let's start with a general systematic or evidence-based review on a topic. When you're trying to develop your topic, you want to take what's in your head and make it something the search engines or the databases can understand. We often think of questions or sentences for our topics, but what we really want to do in the first step is break that out into keywords and phrases. In the case of dealing with cognitive development in aging workers, you might have a question in mind, but you want to break it out to those key ideas, those two phrases: cognitive development, aging workers. I find it helpful to do a mind map or a brainstorm, and to do it with as many people as I can. The more brains with a brainstorm, the better, because one person is limited to what's going on in their brain. When you have two people, one person's idea might trigger something from another. A brainstorm or a mind map doesn't require any tech. There is a link at the end of this presentation that will take you to an electronic one that I did my example with, but you can sit down with a piece of paper and a pencil and accomplish it quite easily. My suggestion is, since you are working in groups for this assignment, to do this as a group, to sit down together and talk about what your key ideas and phrases are, and then what the related ways of talking about this are. With a brainstorm, you want to break it out and think of all the ways you might need to talk about this topic, any other alternative way, any other subjects are talking about this. Think of issues like age, sex, and location. You might need to focus on men over women. You might need to focus on a certain age group. You might need to consider if you can look at Western Europe, Australia, Africa, China, Canada, South America, based on where their medical system is in this process. Think beyond health, especially when you're doing large systematic reviews. For this assignment, you're probably going to find yourself sticking to the health stuff to get enough for what you need, but when you're doing large projects, think beyond this into things like social work, sociology, psychology, education. Business will help you identify HR things if they're dealing with policy and programmatic things. But for treatment of ailments, you're probably going to stick to the health. So in this assignment, focus on the health databases that we have. The ones like CINAHL and Medline will give you multiple boxes to put in all those alternative terminologies in. And when we talk about how to use those databases, you'll see it in action. Throughout this series, I'm going to be working with the example of the aging workforce, or the older worker, and cognitive development or cognitive health. You can see even now I've already identified two different ways of talking about these two different issues. When you do a mind map, and I've just given you an example with some text of my own head and what came up right away, I took this idea of what's going on with aging workers and cognitive development, and I broke it out into four key ideas: the idea of older workers and cognitive health. But since I'm also looking at policy and education, I took those and made them two other sections. You can do as many branches as you want for a mind map. My suggestion is to stick with four, especially for this assignment. Going to 3 or 4 is probably going to be enough for what you've done. But look at the ways that I've talked about this issue. Older workers can be broken out into seniors or baby boomers, or aging workforce, gerontological. I might look at a specific age range of 50 plus or 64 plus. And the same for as we go down. In the policy section, I've identified organizations that might have policies in place to help me. With education, I've looked at terminology in that field that might talk about these. So human resources, professional development, technology, games. The key is to think as broadly as you can so that you have these terms to play with depending on the database. And they don't have to be technical jargony terms. They can be the way the public talks about this issue, the way the news talks about this issue. Because if you leave the health field, the jargon changes. So this is your turn. I want you to try a mind map for your topic. Again, work as a group so that you can get a sense of what you want to research. You're thinking in terms of maybe just the health field in this case, what might be talked about in evidence-based reviews already, and we'll talk about what evidence-based reviews are in the next video so that you can get a better sense of what you might expect to find in those. But in this case, simply focus on the terminology you want to search for, what you think other fields might be talking about if you're going to touch them. Primarily focus on the health fields and what health is talking about, but think a little broader if you need to. This is not an assignment. You don't have to turn anything into me. This is for your benefit. It will help you in the long run. And if you have a hard time with it, let me know. I'm always here to help.